Well, the days of the old Jarl are well gone. Lord Odin will come and visit and take him away to Valhalla. The old Jarl is leaving this place without an heir. So all of you great Vikings with ambition and glory in your mind, there's a chance, so you can follow in his steps, sail the furthest, do the most battles, the most raids, bring back the most glory and fame, and therefore be able to sit in the old Jarl's throne and rule in the name of Odin. Let's have a quick look on how this new game from NSKN Games plays. It's a game about Vikings and their most precious raids and this era that they did flourish and they did a lot of plundering. So let's see how this game plays and if you get the theme out of what you expect from a really Viking game. So In the Name of Odin is a game for 2 to 5 players. It plays pretty fast, 45 to 60 minutes, I think it's quite accurate. And what you get inside the box is, when you open it, is quite a lot of miniatures, a lot of good quality cardboard and a big board game. So when you open the box, what you get inside is quite a lot of plastic miniatures, highly detailed one. Actually, we're going to show you some samples. These are really nice detailed warriors, you can see. We have also a very nice traders with the axe, very nicely done, this detail. And last but not least, the sailors with the shield and the sword, also very nicely done. So these games, besides all these plastic miniatures, come with a huge board, which you see in front of you now. Let's familiarize ourselves with how the game plays, and basically, to delve into this, how the board is divided into different sections. In the upper right part of the board, you can have a section with a box for holding all the Vikings of the game. We have lots of miniatures. There are 3 colors, they're divided into 3 different types of Vikings, and they do different stuff. This is quite good actually, because most of the games would have been just plain wooden cubes, red, grey and blue. But they took the extra step with NSKN Games, they succeeded in their Kickstarter, and they managed to fund this very beautifully done game with highly detailed miniatures. It's really adding to the theme and adding to the value of the game overall. This is a place where you hold your Vikings. Okay, any decent Viking game has raids. These Vikings need to go and plunder places and bring back stuff and treasure from the trips. So what you can see in the middle of the board are the different places the Vikings can raid. Starting from the deck, then you get the closest with 1 range, those places, 2 range and 3 range. These are the furthest going down, the further away moving from the homeland. We can just go right ahead and say that the game lasts as long as there are raid cards on the board. So when the deck is depleted and when the last raid card is achieved, then the game ends. We have different number of cards to be used for different number of players. So more players are going to use more raid cards and less players are going to use less cards. This just is scaling the game pretty well, in my opinion. On the bottom left part of the board you get the buildings deck with the buildings offer, 4 buildings each time, where players are going to select from playing action cards over the course of the game, select some buildings to build them in their own village, and then differentiate themselves clearly enough from the other opponents and give them an edge on winning. Vikings obviously need ships, Longships, to go and do some raids. So this is the deck of the Longships, and this is the offer of the different ships in the game. The different cards show different symbols, but the first thing to take away right now is you have different ranges. So depending on the number of the symbols depicted on the bottom of the card, you see how further away this longship is available to go, the range. On the left of the board we have the display for the action cards. This is a display for the action cards, and this is the deck of action cards. Players are going to play different cards from the hand, trying to match a specific number of symbols to do special stuff in the game, like get more Vikings, build some buildings, get some ships. You're going to see later on how this goes on, but just keep in mind that this is the section where you get your new cards from. Last but not least, we have the 2 sacred stones. The one at the bottom has the damage tokens that we get damage when we do some raids with our different longships. On the top sacred stone we have the construction tokens. We need construction tokens to build more buildings, and we're going to see how this works in a bit. Just to summarize, you may think that this is a pretty occupied, a very busy board, but it's just simple. Just different sections where different card displays are being held, and different Vikings or the stock of the Viking games you can hold. This is very simple, and once you have one or couple of turns, then you're going to see that it's very easy to remember, very easy to locate everything and follow the flow of the game. On the top left corner of the picture you can see the personal board game of each player, basically something like that. What you have here is you have spaces So you can put your selected heroes here, you can put the Vikings you enroll and you enlist here. These are different spaces when you build some of the buildings that you get from the offer, as we've seen before, and this is the place where you put your longship. Please remember that when you build a building, it needs to go on the specific spot as depicted on the player's board. Now, a typical game of In the Name of Odin lasts several rounds. You can go fast or slow depending on how you go through the raid deck, as we've seen before. But each player's turn is consisted of two phases. The action phase, where people resolve any number of actions in any specific order they wish, and then the draw phase, where people, at the end of their action phase, they draw action cards until they have again 6 in their hand. So let's go and see what are the possible actions a player can have on his turn. Now, you may resolve any actions in multiple number of times on your turn, depending on what you want to do with your turn, with the exception of the action cards exchange, which is what I'm going to show you now. Do you remember the action cards display here? In your turn, you can just decide to change one of your cards with one of the display, and then take symbols that you are liking into your hand. Also, immediately before you exchanging a card, you may decide to discard an action card from your hand to replace all cards from the action card offer. If you do so, then you discard all the cards from the offer and draw a new set of new ones. You're not obligated to then select a new one, you just can leave it there. Now, each action card has two different symbols. The top row of symbols is connected with the ability to recruit new Vikings. You see you have red symbols for the warriors, grey, black symbols for the traders, and blue symbols for the sailors. The bottom row of symbols is connected to doing different stuff, like getting more ships, building buildings, or getting more heroes. We're gonna go to this in a bit later, but let's see how the action of gathering Vikings is performed. You can play a number of card symbols from your hand, 1, 2, or 3, say red symbols for warriors, and then we can get 1, 3, or 6 respectively Viking miniatures of that color. So you can do this different times and gather different number of Vikings, but you have to play sets to get different amount of Vikings. Please remember that you are only allowed to keep up to 10 Vikings on your player board. Building an inn will allow you to keep 4 extra Vikings, or some specific inns with different abilities can allow you to recruit even additional Vikings. It may happen that you get above the number of 10 during your turn, but then you have to discard, so you have the most 10 Vikings on your player board. Now, another thing you can do on your turn is you may expend a number of recruitment tokens, like the ones I'm showing you now, and then depending on the number of symbols, you are able to hire one hero from the offer, from the mid-hole. The number of symbols required is determined by the number of recruitment tokens on the left of the space of the chosen hero. You see the ones that come first, right next to the deck, are more expensive, and they also give one additional fame point if you recruit them, and then as they move down, they become cheaper and you can have them for less symbols. Now let's have a closer look on the anatomy of a Viking hero card. As you can see, each hero card depicts on the top left of the card one Viking symbol, one of the three, the sailor, the trader, or the warrior, and one unique one-time special ability. There are two types of abilities. They can be raid abilities and action abilities. The raid abilities are only used during a raid, and the action abilities during a player's turn. When you take a hero, you put it on your player board. You can either use it and then discard it for the action, or you can keep it and then go to a raid, because you cannot go to a raid without any hero on board. Keep in mind, it's sometimes good only to get the hero, to recruit him only for his special ability, but be aware that when you do that, you discard him and he goes out of your village. One other possibility for the player is during his turn to expend 3 green token symbols, like these ones, and then also expend 1 construction token, like that, and then be able to select one of the offering buildings and build it on his player board, his personal player board. Keep in mind that you need to use the building on its specific space. You need to build a forge on the forge blueprint, a runic circle on the runic circle blueprint. You may not build over another building, and you may not destroy a building from your village. Buildings offer you special abilities and also symbol discounts. Also, at the end of the game, you can get additional victory points depending on the victory points at the bottom of the card for that specific building. Now, we just mentioned the construction tokens. How do you get a construction token? You may gain a construction token by expending the number of craftsmanship, the green symbols. So you need to spend the specific number of symbols depending on the total value of buildings you already have in your village and the number of construction tokens you already own. That means that the first buildings are going to be cheaper, and as you go through the game, building more buildings are going to be more expensive for the cost of that next construction token. In all cases, the maximum number of construction tokens a player may have at any given time equals to the number of empty building spots on his village. Now we won't be able to do any raids if we don't have any longships. In order to acquire longships, we need to expend 3 symbols of that specific icon, and then we're able to get one of the offered ships. So basically what you need to do is spend 3 cards with the symbol, and then you select which one you want to get. Keep in mind that different longships have different abilities. One thing to keep always on track is the range, the available range. For example, this longship can only travel 1 range down the road, this one up to 3 or 4. And also they give different discounts, as you can see, different icons, and some of them give different points at the end of the game. What else you can do with these symbols? Now when you go to a raid, we're going to see how a raid works in a bit. You flip this longship card, indicating that you're out in the seas. So if you want to have it again available, you need to spend 2 of those symbols, the bottom ones, and then that indicates that your ship has managed to find his way back to your village with or without the damage token that we're going to explain in a bit. Now when you get to the raid, you get a damage regardless of you always get a damage out of a raid. This indicates that your longship was involved in the battle and has some damage on it. In order to remove this damage token from it, you need to spend 2 symbols of the same icon like the ones I'm showing you now. Essentially, you can also just have it there lying, but keep in mind that when you reach the number of the range, so you have in this case 3 damage tokens or more, then your longship is destroyed and you cannot have it back. It's out of the game. Now how does a raid work? Players will go on to raids to gain victory points. As you can see, let me zoom in a bit for you. You get different spots that indicate they require different Vikings for the raid to occur, and they also are further away or closer to your homeland, and they give different victory points. Let's see, doubling, it provides 5 victory points with a successful raid, as you can see, plus 1 additional from the spot of the boat on the bottom. Now, raiding works in a very simple way. What you do in your turn is you need to declare that you go on a raid. So you're raiding, you let the other players know that you're raiding. You need to be able to meet the demands of the raid. So you start from your homeland, and then the further you move down, the higher the range. 1 range, 2 range, 3 range. So say I want to raid Dublin, I need to have a longship already that matches the range 2. Take damage tokens under consideration. You need to have those Vikings, 1 sailor, 1 trader, and 4 warrior, plus 1, because we have the modifier here, plus 1. Then we need to provide all this back to the bank. We keep the longship, we just have it damaged, and then we are declaring that we did the raid. Keep in mind though that there is a phase after that for the modification of the raid, meaning that before actually completed the raid, each other player has an opportunity to play a symbol card, basically to play a card not for the Viking symbol but for the symbol below, the bottom one. Each player on the left of the active player doing the raid gets to say if he's actually contributing a card or passing. When you get up to 3, the rest of the players will pass, they don't have an option, they're going to pass. So you need to acquire at least 3 symbols. If for any reason everyone passes and you don't get 3 symbols for that, you draw 2 cards from the deck of cards, and then you have 3 symbols. Now what you need to do is you need to match those action symbols, so you need to expend cards from your hand. So if you manage to match them all successfully, then your raid is really good and really successful, and you get more points. If you're not able to match them successfully, then you subtract some points from what you would originally have gotten if you didn't. So how you receive fame from the raid? You gain fame points depicted on your chosen raid card. That means for Dublin, for example, it's 5 points. And then what you do is you need to gain or lose fame points according to the numbers of action cards still faced up on the table. If you match, the card is resolved and get the matched cards are out of the section, out of the game. Whatever is still laying on the table, then you need to resolve. If action cards still faced up on the table are 1, 0, 1, 2 or 3, then that results in getting +1, 0, -1 or -2 fame points. Essentially, if you matched all the symbols, then you're going to get a boost of +1 victory points. If you didn't match any of the 3 symbols, you're going to lose 2 points. If there is only 1 card still on the table, then you're not losing, you're not getting any points. And finally, if there's still 2, then you get -1 points. So you're gonna get more points or lose more points depending on what you did with the matching of the symbols at this phase. As we mentioned before, you need to flip your card to indicate that it's in open waters, and you need to put a damage token on it. Then you need to expend 2 symbols to remove this, another 2 symbols to flip it, or whichever turn you prefer. Then every player who contributed into the matching symbol phase, he draws 1 card from the deck, and the raid is successfully finished, is concluded. These are the options of the actions you can have depending on what you select to do with your turn and with your cards and with your available possible actions. When you're done, you draw up to 6 action cards in your hand, and then the next player turn is about to start. Now when the game ends immediately when the last raid card is completed, meaning the deck is depleted and the last available raid card is concluded. That means that instantly the game ends, and then we'll proceed with scoring. How do we score points? We add all the points around the board game, what we achieved during the game session, and then we also add to our score, total score, any number of fame points symbols depicted on the buildings we have in our villages, any fame symbols depicted on the longships that we have in our possession, regardless if it's damaged or not, and finally every complete set of 3 warriors, red, black and blue, gives us 1 fame point, as well as every complete set of 3 different Vikings is worth 1 fame point. We total, and the Viking with the most victory points is the winner of the game. Now the beauty of the game for me is in the spices mix. And what do I mean with that is that you get different abilities from your buildings. How you push your buildings gives you different edge over your opponents. You get different ranges and different abilities from the longships. You get different discounts both from the buildings and both from your longships when you do the different raids. So when you need to match the different Vikings that this raid is demanding for the raid to be successful. Also, don't forget that the heroes are very important. They have special abilities that boost what you gain from your turn, but also they're expendable, meaning that you're going to use it as an action regardless if you go on a raid and get what the Viking hero gives you, or use it for the raid, and then after the raid he's gone completely, returned to the deck. Buildings are essential for the development of your Viking engine if you want, but those construction tokens are really difficult to get as you further develop your village, meaning the first buildings will be easier to accomplish, but then moving to your 3rd or your 4th building will be much more difficult because the cost of the construction tokens will be higher. Now you see what I mean after you've seen the explanation of the game, that all these nicely sculptured miniatures in other games would have been chips or simply red, grey and blue cubes. This plastic miniature gives another level to the Viking feeling, and together with a beautiful artwork and the different cards add to the atmosphere and brings the game to be more alive and coming out of the table and giving the real Viking feel we want. So what do I think about this game? I really liked it because it has several sweet spots for me. One of them is the length of the game. 45 to 60 minutes, it's a good, really good, enjoyable time to spend. You get a good game, a good feeling out of this, and still you don't burn yourself with 2 or 3 hours gameplay that some more demanding games want. It's a nice sweet spot for the time. Also, you get a lot of value from the game. Big board, nicely done, beautifully illustrated cards, nice artwork. The map is very nice. It's also very nice to see all the plastic miniatures, because you want to have miniature Vikings. Little miniatures, not cubes, for your village to be more alive and more vivid in front of you. This helps, really helps visually. So for me this game shines through simplicity, because you do a lot of simple stuff in your turn. You just take some buildings, you modify a bit yourself, you have different heroes with different abilities, you match and get what the demand of the different raids are in different Viking types, warriors, traders and sailors, and then you depending on the range you want, you get different longships to do that. Also with the actions you can select what symbols to keep for the opponent attack when you do the modification of the raid, or what symbols to use for the next turn. So it's nicely done. It works very, very simple and very, very nice. I really enjoyed how this game scales. I've played it with 2 players, with 3 players and with 4 players. I haven't tried the 5-player game so far, but whatever number I tried, it was really working well, because the scaling is dependent on the number of raid cards. There is a lot of things to select and a lot of things to do, but the raid cards is giving the pace and scaling of the game depending on the number of players. So I enjoyed all of the numbers of the players. When you see the board, don't hesitate. Don't think this is a heavy, difficult game that you need to understand a lot of rules. You need to set up a lot of things to make it work. It's just a matter of a couple of minutes to set it up. Then you get your person on board and you start playing immediately. Very, very nice. And also you get a lot of gaming meat out of it, because it's simple but has a lot of options, a lot of things to master, a lot of things to put in the correct order to do. and gives you a nicely done problem to solve, to make it better, to make it work better from your opponents. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to more plays out of this, and I hope I made you interested in the game, and I made you want to try it, give it a try. This was In the Name of Odin, very nicely done, both from the company and from the designer of the game. I haven't played anything else from him. Very nicely game. Very fresh as well, in my opinion. Thank you for watching.